Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Well, I've got a really interesting young lady to introduce you to tonight. Danielle Nonog is her name. She is a date coach and matchmaker. And I had her recommended to me by someone I interviewed a couple of weeks ago who said, this is someone who could put me in my place and really make me understand what it is that successful, self-reliant women want. And she says that self-reliant, successful women are often frustrated, attracting immature partners that are opportunistic with a lack of direction into their life. And so what she does is she teaches these females to tap into their inner enchantress so that they can attract hot dates that are ready equipped to protect, provide, and cherish. Fantastic. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me here.
So why do successful self-reliant women get frustrated because they're attracting immature men? Why don't they attract mature men?
Because they've been taught most of their lives to give and give, and there's nothing wrong with giving. However, if they come from a masculine place of giving to their partner the way a man does and showing up, listing their accomplishments and their degrees, they tend to attract naturally those that are opportunistic. It's typically guys that see an opportunity to, oh, I can kick back and relax because she can do all the heavy financial work. I see this tends to happen a lot.
Really? I would have thought a successful female would have wanted a successful man and attracted a successful man. And you're saying they're not attracting successful men.
Yeah, ideally that's what they want, but they tend to attract men that are in their feminine energy.
Really? And what about successful men? Do they attract successful females or do they attract immature females?
I found that they attract both. So when they attract a successful female, I find that they try to make it work, but there's something in there that doesn't feel balanced. So they're unsure of why it's not working. But they also attract immature females that are not necessarily ready to be in a relationship. So there's a lot more into it. There's a lot of layers to it.
And so how did you come to this conclusion that this was a market that needed to be coached and helped along? You've just met a lot of people that had this challenge?
I not only met a lot of women with this challenge, I also went through this challenge myself through my own personal development journey.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Gosh, where to start? So when I was in my younger 20s, I'm 32 right now. I was in this typical family where, a typical feminist where I was taught that you should never rely on a man, so always go hard in your career. And that's what I did. And it came to a point where I felt like I was heavily burning myself out. And I was very frustrated because whenever I would go on dates with men, I always led with my career. I led with all my accomplishments in college. And I find that what I crave as I'm in relationship with these men is to be cherished, to be catered to. And I find myself not saying anything because I don't want to come across as a gold digger for wanting to be taken care of, even though I had my own money. I didn't know what femininity and masculinity was at the time. I didn't know that existed. I remember experiencing these experiences, and I learned over time what femininity and what masculinity was. And I realized I was craving partnerships where there is masculinity and there is chivalry. So it was interesting how I've come to find that what most people call traditional roles or gender roles is pretty valuable. And it's also I noticed it also exists in LGBTQ relationships.
Really?
And for the record, I am in a same-sex relationship right now.
Right now, so not always. This is a
Always. I have dated both men and women and um, transgenders, like all across the board. I consider myself pansexual. I'm capable of being attracted to all types.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's
Yes.
interesting. So tell us then what are masculine traits and what are feminine traits in your definition?
In my definition, masculine traits is someone who loves to take the lead, knows how to take the lead, but not be domineering. They know how to take the lead and have the receiver feel safe in following the lead. And then femininity is someone who is receptive and is very soft and nurturing. And the thing is, I find that people tend to misconstrue and think that being soft and nurturing is weak. But actually, it provides a lot of strength, especially for the masculine counterpart. It helps elevate them. And in return, as the masculine counterpart feels strong and is able to do their thing, is able to protect the feminine.
So you were, when you were dating men, you were talking about your career, you were talking about your accomplishments, you were being strong, and you were suggesting, therefore, that you were being masculine, but you were attracting weak, immature guys that were, are you saying, a little bit too feminine? Or
yeah, they're feminine
traits
in their
to show through?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
They let their feminine traits show through. They're not effeminate, but they were too weak or too nurturing, or what?
Their femininity came out when I called them out and saying, hey, I know I make my own money and I know I pay for my own things, but I'll just share an example. This is a real example. I dated a man, and this was my first long distance relationship. And I was excited because it came across as if he was going to purchase my plane ticket so that I could go visit him, because he was encouraging me, hey, visit me out here. Let's make it happen. I was like, sure. So I noticed he was being very passive and was waiting for me to just pay for it. And I remember feeling so uncomfortable about that because I didn't know how to bring that up. I remember having an inner conflict saying, but wait, this is modern times. I should just pay for my own flight and just go. I shouldn't have to ask and I shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable about it. But the more I kept holding that in, it eventually built up into resentment. And eventually we would talk about it and we found we're just not a match.
Because he wanted what? Someone that was strong and independent and wanted to be masculine, and you wanted to be feminine.
He prefers a woman that takes charge, because he shared with me that he's not in the best financial place in his life. So he would rather a woman take charge in that way.
And was he immature, the way that you described a lot of these guys?
He was actually pretty immature. I mean, he was mature, but there were other guys previous to him that were immature. And there's also a role that I play where, I was not aware of. There were a lot of things I had to learn as well while I was dating these guys that were immature.
This is fascinating. We're chatting tonight with Danielle Nonog. She is a date coach. She helps single, independent women attract thriving romantic relationships. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes with Danielle Nonog. We're going to talk a little bit about masculine traits, feminine traits, traditional values, modern values, feminism, feminist values. This is going to be an interesting chat tonight. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Danielle Nonog. She is a date coach and matchmaker. She helps single, independent women attract thriving romantic relationships. And she's thinking that a lot of successful, self-reliant women are frustrated because they're attracting immature guys that are too feminine or allow too many of their feminine traits to show through. So this is, as you said earlier, what a lot of people would might think as sort of traditional sex roles or traits. Are you suggesting we should go back to very traditional roles? And you said you grew up with a mother that was very feminist. Isn't that a little bit different than what your upbringing was all about?
I'm trying to understand which question to answer. So,
is this traditional values? Are you saying we go back to traditional values of men are men and women are women?
I would say that it is valuable. It is something to be aware of rather than dismissing it. Because I remember when I used to dismiss it all the time, and I found that whenever I would dismiss these traditional values, I would end up in this uncomfortable situation, not knowing how to express myself. So it was also something I explored in other women that I've helped, and I've watched them grow as they tap into their femininity. They 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 would describe to me, and I've also experienced this myself, that when I allow myself to be feminine and allow the man to take charge, I notice myself feeling less tired and opening up more and trusting. Because what I find a common trait among hyper independent women is they have such a hard time trusting. And I understand that because I went through that myself.
And you said you grew up in a feminist household, or with a mother that was very feminist?
Yes, my mother was very feminist. She was the breadwinner, and she taught me that I should absolutely never rely on a man. And I took that to the extreme, where I made sure any guy I dated, he never paid for anything. Even if he offered, I would say no.
And what does your mother think about this change in your attitudes to being more feminine?
That's a good question, because she and I never talked about this change. But when we have caught up, she would share with me how I'm much braver than she is. And she's happy in how much I've transformed. She's noticed, she doesn't know all the details of how I've transformed myself, but she sees a change, and she sees a much more confident version of me than when she knew me as a little girl.
But it's interesting. You're much more confident. You is more feminine, less masculine.
Yeah.
When most people would think extra confidence is a masculine trait.
You're right. Most people would think that.
But
Yeah.
it's not. So what is it? Like, I guess what you're saying is that you enjoy being feminine, and that you're more comfortable and authentic in your feminine self. And so even though confidence is often thought of as a masculine trait, maybe you were being inauthentic. And so therefore you lacked confidence when you were trying to be very aggressive and masculine. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say you're spot on with that. I love that you made it more precise in where it was, because that's true. When I was being very masculine in these relationships, it felt very inauthentic, and I didn't have the words, or I didn't know I was allowed to express myself a certain way. So it was mind blowing for me as I learned from other feminine role models and learned to be open minded to it. And ever since I did, it changed my life drastically.
So Maria, who introduced us, she told me that she thought that the women's movement today, or feminists today, had robbed females of the opportunity to be feminine, because they were demanding that they be more masculine, more confident, more aggressive, more take care of themselves, take charge. What do you think? Is the feminist movement robbing females of the opportunity to be feminine?
It's a scam. I would say that the feminist movement, they definitely meant well. Because yes, women needed their freedom. They needed to be able to have the choice to work, because unfortunately there were some men who did not do that. They didn't provide that. So something needed to happen. So that's why they fought for their rights to work. So I understand that part, like, needed to happen. However, what we were not prepared for was that if we focus so much on our independence and focus on never needing a man, we don't realize that it's all fear-based. It's gone, I've met and observed radical feminists where they've gone so far that way that they don't even look at men as men anymore. So I can see how it can be a huge relational block in modern dating.
They don't look at men as men anymore. What do they look at men as?
They tend to be very condescending towards them. It's as if they're subordinate. They feel like they always have to, what is it? They have to be higher than them. I've just noticed in the way they talk to them. And I can even say this for myself. I used to have those kind of views. It used to be normalized to be around groups of women where they'll be nice to men in public, but when we talk alone in our girl friends group, they would casually talk trash about men. And I used to be part of that. It took a long time for me to personally develop myself and see how that's so toxic. And unfortunately, it's very common in the modern world.
But it's interesting. What you're saying is that these, successful females attract these weak men. But what you're saying is they see men as weak. And so therefore, maybe they're just attracting what they see and what they manifest and what they manufacture, what they perceive men to be.
I love that you're adding that, because their perspective is that men are weak. They actively look for that too. So if
to
they
prove
don't
themselves
believe,
right.
Yeah, they're proving themselves right. There's a psychological aspect to that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's absolutely correct.
Okay, so if you've got a very successful, articulate, ambitious, confident female that wants to attract a strong man, how do you coach her? What do you tell her to do?
Practice leaning back. Practice
leaning back. So this is the opposite of lean in.
leaning in and doing it all. Yeah. So I always tell the women, when the man offers, allow him to take charge. And I notice their response to that is, that's hard, Danielle. It's really hard. And it's a trust issue. So from there, I ask them, okay, what is it about that that's hard? And usually they'll share a story with me and why they have a hard time trusting. And there's so many reasons why they have a hard time trusting.
What are the reasons?
One of them is they've experienced trauma in the past. Another common one is similar to my story, where they have always been taught to never trust or to never allow a man to take care of them in that way, because it's a sign of them trying to control. That's the story that a lot of modern day women hold. So they're scared of being controlled.
So what about the men? Do men want to be masculine, or do they want to be feminine?
Well, what I do notice is that when they're called feminine, they get offended. So that tells me that they prefer to be masculine. But if they're unaware, if they get offended, they're likely unaware of what masculinity and what femininity is. They're probably not aware of how they show up.
But isn't there a lot of pressure in our society today for men to be more, maybe not feminine, but have feminine qualities? We talk about empathy, and we talk about compassion, and we talk about, don't manspread in the subways or in the buses, and don't roughhouse in school, and isn't there a lot of pressure on men these days to not be men?
There has been pressure. Men do experience pressure. But the great news is that I am noticing there are men's coaches that are arising, and they're not only teaching men to, yes, be strong and take leadership, they are finding now that men get to learn emotional intelligence. So it's not about dismissing leadership as a whole and dismissing providing and protecting. I'm finding now that it's growing in numbers that men are being taught emotional intelligence. And being emotionally intelligent doesn't mean that you have to cry all the time. And yeah, I'm not sure where you know where I'm going with this.
Okay, so
I kind of lost my train of thought.
So you're saying that emotional intelligence is good, but doesn't mean you have to be weak. So that there's some aspects of sort of modern day definitions of masculinity that have, you know, gone a little bit more with feminine aspects, whether they be emotional intelligence or empathy or compassion or stuff like this. But it doesn't have to be weak and cry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying. Okay,
Yes,
so tell me what it is that is the masculine traits you like. You've commented a couple of times about someone who pays. What else? You mentioned chivalry. What is chivalry, and what are the traits, the masculine traits? Take charge. What else?
Masculine traits: take charge, leadership, protective. And when people hear protective, they think physically. Yes, you protect physically. That's attractive, but also emotionally being protective towards one another. So, for example, I just blanked out on an example right now, but it's also helping the women feel emotionally safe, especially in modern times. So financially and emotionally safe.
So do females not easily feel emotionally safe?
No.
You're saying they're confident, they're aggressive, they're successful. They should feel emotionally safe. Why don't they?
See, aggression doesn't come from confidence, though. When anybody has the need to feel aggressive, that means they're feeling a lack of control. So, unfortunately, women are being pressured to be aggressive so that they can handle the workforce.
It really seems like you're almost back to the Mad Men kind of 1950s stereotypes.
I wouldn't say, it's definitely more a nuance today, because I don't think a lot of women, they don't need to be the housewife. They're not obligated to have that. Like, they still have a choice. And that's what I appreciate about feminism. Like, there's a choice. But what I am seeing with feminism is that women that want to stay at home, or they don't want to work anymore, they're being shamed for it because they're attached to that identity that if you don't work, then you should be ashamed.
Really? Ashamed?
I see it all the time. Yes.
Really? There was this article in the New York Times just a week or two ago about a trend they said was the stay at home girlfriend, that not even housewives, but girlfriends are volunteering to stay at home and cook and clean and make the house nice for the boyfriend when he comes home. Is that something you should be ashamed of?
Stay-at-home girlfriend. Interesting. I don't think it's something to be ashamed of. It's beautiful to want to have responsibilities for the home. And it's beautiful to want to be the one to spend more time with the children. But unfortunately, it is commonly shamed.
So this is interesting. It's almost as if you're arguing for the right for females to have more traditional values, while feminist people today are almost saying, you're saying almost demand that no, you're not allowed to be feminine. You've got to be career minded and into a job and taking care of yourself and paying your own way and things like that. And yet you're saying no, even those females want to be feminine.
Yeah, I have been finding that. I talk to a lot of women where they're very high into their career and they take a lot of pride in it, but they're unhappy and they don't really know who to talk about it with. And I understand, because I was in their position before.
I chatted with someone recently, a successful female CEO, who said that men were intimidated by her success.
That is a common thing too. That is a common phrase that they do say.
And so how do we solve for that? We need to build even stronger men, or we got to turn her into
She
more
has to
feminine?
soften herself.
She has to soften herself.
Yes, she has to soften herself. She's gotten herself to, she learned to protect herself heavily. Like she learned to have these walls. It's likely from her upbringing and socially.
Danielle, this is fascinating. If people want to reach out to you to get to access to your coaching, how do they best do that?
You can go to the website, daniellenonog.com, or you can also reach me in Facebook and Instagram. You type in my first and last name, Danielle Nonog, or my Instagram handle, @ Danielle Nonog, all one word.
Danielle Nonog, a dating coach who specializes in females that are successful, but want a little bit more femininity in their life. Fascinating. We're going to take a break and come back with Danielle in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. This is interesting. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're having a fun chat tonight with Danielle Nonog, who is a date coach and matchmaker, and she helps single, independent, successful women attract thriving romantic relationships. You've launched something called Stilettos University. What is Stilettos University?
Stilettos University, think of stilettos as the entity of femininity. So my tagline is we heal up and elevate. And it's a play on the words with heal. It's like you put your heels on, your standards are high, and you elevate, you heal up. So figuratively, we're elevating together as women.
Okay. And this university is the coaching business that you do?
Yes.
Okay. And you also run something called Inspire to Win. What's that?
Oh, I don't run that. I was a apprentice in Inspire to Win. That was from a coach that I used to work with years ago that got me into entrepreneurship. I'm very grateful in how they started me up.
And you're from Honolulu?
Yeah, I was born there.
And you now live in San Diego?
Yes. I've lived here since I was 10 years old.
Oh, really? Awesome. And you said that you're actually in a lesbian relationship now.
Yes.
Tell me how, for someone who dated men, that came about.
How that even came about? Well, she and I have been friends for 3 years, and I've always admired her from afar. And I remember from the first time I met her as a friend, I've always been attracted to her. And it was until the 3rd year where she invited me to her birthday party, and I was dating a man at the time. We reconnected, and I felt there was an attraction with both of us. It wasn't just me who felt a strong attraction towards her. I could feel that she was also attracted to me. So we explored that. And eventually I broke up with the man that I was with. He was not happy about that, but what drew me to the woman that I'm with is that I really appreciate how she emotionally makes me feel safe, and her level of communication is really high. And the way she shows up is so different from the man that I was with. And the man that I was with was great. He was a great gentleman. But yeah, it wasn't something I expected to grow stronger in the relationship that I'm in. So that's what happened.
And are you the feminine and she's the masculine in the relationship?
Definitely. I am the feminine and she is the masculine. She likes to take charge.
Really? That's it. And had you had lesbian relationships before? Had she had lesbian relationships before, or was this the first for the two of you?
She is more experienced in lesbian relationships. I began exploring women year 2020, so it's sort of fresh for me. But I did date a woman before her. And when I was dating this woman before her, my energy was more masculine and hers was more feminine. It's really interesting how it switches with different people.
That is interesting. And so
Yeah.
do you think, therefore, that in LGBT, lesbian or gay relationships, there typically is a masculine energy and a feminine energy, and yet you can shift at different times?
Yes, they call it switchy energy.
Switchy energy.
Yeah, there are people that tend to be switchy.
Okay, so let's say I want to be more masculine, and what would you tell me to do if I wanted to be that more masculine person that would attract the types of females we've been discussing, other than just pay?
Well, here's the thing. When these two people show up, it just happens naturally. One person will show up masculine. The masculine tends to pursue. They proactively look for signs and cues like, oh, is she showing a body language where I'm going to show up and take charge? It just tends to happen naturally, even if
so pursue is one thing. So be the pursuer.
Pursue is one thing, yeah.
Okay, what else? Are you arguing for opening doors and pulling out the chair when you sit down and standing up when you go to the washroom? Tell me what type of things do you want us to do if we're masculine?
Attention to detail when it comes to protecting the woman. So the obvious one is that when you see her, when you guys both walk outside, let's say you finish dinner, you offer her, oh, can I walk you to your door? It is dark outside. Like walk you to your car. That's a sign of like, I want to make sure she gets there safe. So any particular, let me share another example because that's very typical. Another one is, let's say the both of you went out a night drinking and she was having such a fun time. She drank and drank. And the masculine is noticing that, whoa, she drank a lot. If she drinks another one, she's probably not going to be aware of her surroundings. So I'm going to kindly offer her some water and sneak and drink that alcohol that's in her hand and make sure she's well hydrated. So little things like that show you care and want to make sure she's safe. That's masculine.
Okay. Turn around. If you want to teach this articulate, successful female to be more feminine, what are you going to tell her to do?
To the most basic thing is to just tell her to practice saying yes when he offers. Because a lot of times men want to offer things. And it's not just paying for things, but, offering a jacket, little things like that. That's the basic level that she needs to practice, saying yes. Instead of saying no, 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 instead of dismissing everything, because that's her go-to response.
Because she's a feminist and she doesn't want those things to be done.
Right.
This is fascinating. So it really is that you think that that more traditional values will make people happier.
Yeah, and I would say I don't even know if I want to call it traditional because I don't think of traditional from the 1950s because it's so much more nuanced today. There are women who love their career, but they also want to experience that femininity that was more common back in the day. So it's like you still have qualities of some qualities that are in the modern day, but also some qualities from the traditional days.
Now, there's a lot of men in my peer group that are divorced that are looking for the younger female. What's that all about? Is that to find someone that is more, weaker, younger, more feminine?
Oof. So there is a typical, what most people, okay. So there's many answers to this. Yes, there are men who look for younger women because, yes, physical attractiveness is important. That's just nature. Yes, there are men that look for women that are impressionable and don't really know how to hold their boundaries. But there are men who also won't do that. It depends on where their mindset is at. So, what is that really all about? Yeah, it makes me think of how I have certain uncles in my family. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, I'm just going to share it. So it's common that they will go to another country. They'll go back to their country, even though they worked so hard to come here to America. And they're missing that femininity in a woman. So they will look for someone out there who is still practicing those feminine values.
The more traditional feminine.
Yeah, the more traditional. Individual. Yeah, I see it happen in my family a lot. And I see it happen everywhere. So it's definitely a thing. But I don't want to say that all men look for younger women, because that's also not true.
Yeah. So Maria, who introduced us, she said there's nothing wrong with a female wanting to marry up and find someone that will provide for her and take care of her. What do you think of that?
I do agree with that, because the men that I've dated, the men that I tend to be attracted to are older. And the reason why I felt more at ease dating older men is because they have more to offer than men that are my age. So
more to offer financially or in other ways?
Always, financial and emotionally, because the younger men that I have dated, they're not quite there emotionally as well in what women need. So yeah, I'm trying to find another way to answer this, but that's what comes up for me when you ask that question.
So this is fascinating. It's a really interesting topic. So often of late we've had, conversations about lean in and force yourself to put your hand up if you're in school, and don't be afraid to the Hillary Clinton, wear a pantsuit and be aggressive, and that if you're called names like feisty and things like that it's derogatory, and we shouldn't allow it to be derogatory. You're almost suggesting that that's gone too far and it's put females into a position they're uncomfortable with. Is that true?
Absolutely. It's gone way too far, because I can think of all the women I've talked to who have gotten so far with their career, and they really wish they've told me this. They wish they've learned to be feminine a long time ago. Like, they wish they weren't scared to be that, because now they're learning it at kindergarten level. And it's like, just be patient. I tell them, be patient. You will learn this, and you will find that it's natural to think that way, because we also have to release the shame around it. It's a lot of work that they have to go through.
So, this question that gets asked of successful females often about, can you have it all? Which I think is, the successful career and the successful marriage, successful motherhood, etc. Do you think you can have it all? Or do you have to pick to be the masculine, success-oriented person in the business and a lousy home life, or the feminine, very happy to be home life, but give up the career?
There needs to be a balance. So if you want to be the person in relationship, I say person because I'm also including same-sex relationships, whether it's two men or two women, one needs to be more comfortable being at home and more natural with children. The other one is probably more natural with being driven in business. And the thing is, when two people are too into their business, how are they going to have time with their children? Psychologically, that's going to do something for the children.
Yeah.
You need someone to be at home to make home feel safe. And I realized this hit close home for me because, and bless my parents, they only knew what they knew, but they didn't know how to make home feel safe. So both of them just knew that they needed to hustle and they needed to make money for a living. And I saw how that affected me. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
You've got a list of things that you've helped clients with that I think is interesting. Let me read them if I could, and maybe you can comment. Frustrations that come with being too clingy, anxious attachment. Frustrations that come with being too distant and untrusting, avoidance attachment,
Mm-hmm.
lack of clarity and full of overwhelm, resentment that comes with people pleasing, jadedness, lack of understanding their counterpart, low self-esteem, and many more. What do you do with these people?
I take them through my date mastery method. I call it the 3 M's. So the first M is magnify. Think of a magnifying glass. We look very closely in all of their relational blocks. What's holding them back in relationships and dating? What's holding them back in getting what they want? Magnetize is the second step. And that has everything to do with becoming magnetic. And what comes with being magnetic is releasing those relational blocks, getting real in how they show up, and doing a lot of inner work that's related to their triggers that make them unattractive. So we go through every trigger that makes them mad and turn it into something playful. That way they can show up in their dates confident and being playful whenever these triggers come up. They'll learn to neutralize it. So they can enter dates having fun rather than being easily reactive. And then step 3 is match. So we keep repeating the first 2 steps until they find their match.
So you give these people this sort of deep dive into themselves, and then thinking through who they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go on dates with them? Are you, I think about that movie with the very aggressive female reporter or producer that needed the coaching on how to dress sexy and dress feminine and act that way. Is that what you do?
I role play with them. Yeah, I don't go on actual dates with them, but I do role play with them. And it helps getting in-person experience, in-person feel, and how they actually show up. So sometimes I will notice the way they eat their food or their mannerisms that they're unconscious of, and I'll point that out to them.
You have said that you think dance is a great way to get to know somebody.
Oh, yes. Yes. This had me thinking of an interview I had with a gentleman named Ozzy Meneses, and he does salsa and bachata dancing, and he holds a lot of salsa and bachata events in San Diego. And I was intrigued with what he said and how he studied the leader and the follower in salsa dancing. And the more he talked about it, I was like, wow, that's masculine and feminine energy. So when people are learning to dance, you see how they naturally flow. There are people who naturally prefer to follow, and there are people that naturally prefer to lead. I remember when I did salsa dancing with my lover, we were just thrown in there and they're like, okay, you two dance. And when I was pointed at to lead, I was very stiff. And she had to keep telling me what to do. I'm like, wait, don't tell me what to do. I got to lead. It didn't feel natural. So when it was her turn to lead, the dance felt more in flow and I was having more fun. Versus the prior dance, it did not feel fun for me because everything was stiff. So it was interesting to see that when I saw other people dancing and they were finding out what felt more natural for them.
That's interesting because I love to dance, and I used to actually teach jive dancing, and I dance with different females. There are some that are so difficult to lead, and others that it's as if they're an extension of yourself. They just do exactly what you want without you even trying to tell them what to do. It happens. They follow you.
Yeah. These things, these cues can be so subtle, but it's there.
Interesting. You also posted a lot about fear of intimacy. I'd like to chat about that a little bit, if we could, after we take a final break for some messages and come back with Danielle Nonog, a dating coach, a relationship coach. Stay with us, everybody. Interesting conversation tonight. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with Danielle Nonog. She is a dating coach and specializes in successful females that are looking for a more romantic, intimate relationship, particularly ones that allow them to be their feminine self, it would appear. And that's kind of interesting. And I guess up until tonight, I would have thought that was more of a traditional value, one that was looked down upon in today's society. And Danielle says, yes, it is looked down on in today's society, but it shouldn't be, because you should have every right to be that type of person. Danielle, you also wrote a long post about the fear of intimacy, suggesting that a lot of people have this fear of intimacy, difficulty. I don't know whether it's a difficulty to commit or just a difficulty to open up. Tell me about why you wrote this post.
So what inspired me to write that post is really, it's a poem. And I was thinking back in the times where my mindset used to be so scared of intimacy. And something I'm learning to be okay with sharing through radios is that I used to work as an exotic dancer in the past. And I remember when I used to be in that profession, I feared intimacy so much. I thought that I only needed to focus on money and I was safe. And I remembered how hard it was for me to let go of that in order to attract a healthy relationship. I saw how many times I've sabotaged myself when there was an opportunity to be with a quality person, to be in relationship with. So that's what inspired me to write about that. And yeah, it does have to do with trust issues. It does have to do with, a lot of things, mainly trust issues.
And how does one get over that?
A lot of work, surrounding yourself with supportive people and choosing to do something different. I remember for me, I noticed I was a hamster in the wheel. I was making a lot of money as a dancer, but I was a hamster in a wheel. And it took me to get real with myself and wanting something different. And getting real with myself, I'm like, you're lonely. I shout to the world that I'm not a lonely person and I can get anybody I want. But the reality was that I was really lonely. And even though, yes, I could attract anybody, I didn't know how to sustain it. So yeah, there's a lot of work. It takes tremendous effort to learn how to trust. And that's why I'm passionate about the work that I do.
How long were you dancing?
I was dancing for 5 years.
What do you think of that? Is that, dancing is something that's looked down upon by society, but you're quite upfront about your history doing that. Is it something that should be more accepted by society?
It is becoming more accepted by society, but I see a lot of toxicity behind it. And I remember how I used to think when I used to be in that industry. My mindset was so different. And I remember noticing a lot of women that danced, they too had a fear of intimacy. And I saw the anger that they held that I used to have. Even though I knew how to be sexy and charming on the outside, I held anger issues that stemmed from my childhood, where I did not have good experiences with men as a child. And it showed up in my adult life in dancing, where I was obsessed with revenge. Like, I emptied men's wallets and bank accounts because I was so angry from my childhood. That was my way of revenging my inner child.
Were you raped or beaten or something?
I was sexually abused, and I was physically abused by someone in the family.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. Well, it's understandable to a certain extent that you wanted to have revenge, but it sounds like you've gotten over that.
Definitely. I'm working through it every day, and my relationships with men have drastically improved. And that's another reason why I'm so passionate about helping women get through that hard work.
Well, again, if people want to contact you, what's the best way to do that? If they want to access your coaching or some of your motivation?
Sure. You can reach me at daniellenonog.com. You can also reach me through Facebook and Instagram. First name Danielle, last name Nonog. Nonog is Nonog. And my Instagram handle is @ Danielle Nonog.
Well, @ Danielle Nonog, thank you so much for joining us tonight and talking a little bit about relationships and about how you think successful females that are ambitious and successful too often want to have romance with another successful man, but they too often attract weak, insecure, immature gentlemen. And I guess I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's interesting. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, and thanks for the coaching you do. I'll have to give some more thought about this, the benefit of traditional roles. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Good night.